AITA for refusing to pay for my friend's wedding after they excluded my partner from the guest list. So I, 29F, have been friends with Lena, 29F, for over 10 years. We met in college and instantly clicked. We've been through everything together, from breakups to job losses and everything in between. She's been an amazing friend to me, and I really value our friendship. That's why when she got engaged to her fiancé, James, 32M, last year, I was ecstatic for her. The problem started when Lena sent out the invitations for her wedding. I've been dating my partner, Chris, 31M, for about 3 years now. We've been living together for the last year and a half, and things are going great. We've talked about marriage and kids, and we both have the same long-term goals. To me, he's a huge part of my life, and I want him to be included in all major events that matter to me. Lena sent me the invitation to her wedding about 2 months ago, and I was really excited. However, when I looked at the guest list, I realized that Chris wasn't invited. At first, I thought it might just be an oversight, so I asked Lena casually about it when we were on the phone a few days later. She told me that she wasn't inviting anyone's partners unless they were married. I was shocked. I asked her why she made this rule, and she said it was because she wanted to keep the guest list small and intimate, only inviting people who were legally committed. Now, this made no sense to me. For starters, Chris and I have been living together for almost 2 years, and we've been in a committed relationship the entire time. I pointed this out to her, but Lena insisted that it was her wedding, and she had the right to decide who gets invited. I was pretty upset about the whole situation, especially because we've been friends for so long. But I didn't want to make a huge deal about it, so I told her I would come alone, but that I was hurt by her decision. Lena seemed kind of indifferent to my feelings, but I thought maybe it was just the stress of wedding planning getting to her. The situation took a turn when I found out from a mutual friend that Lena was inviting another friend, Maggie, 30F, and her boyfriend, whom Maggie had only been dating for 6 months. So I decided to call Lena out on this. I told her that if she was going to invite someone's partner who had been in a relationship for such a short time, it felt unfair that she wasn't inviting someone who had been with me for over 3 years. Lena's response was that it was different because Maggie and her boyfriend were really close, and that she was making exceptions for people she had strong relationships with. This really pissed me off because I felt like I was being treated as a second-class friend, and that my long-term partner wasn't even being considered a real part of my life. I asked Lena if she was implying that my relationship wasn't important enough to her to warrant an invitation for Chris, and she got defensive, saying that I was overreacting. At this point, I told Lena that I wouldn't be attending her wedding if Chris wasn't invited. I explained that I couldn't go and celebrate her marriage while being excluded from celebrating my own relationship. Lena didn't take it well. She accused me of being dramatic and told me that I was ruining her special day. She said that this was about her, and that I needed to stop making everything about me. I was absolutely floored. Lena had always been a good friend to me, and I didn't understand why she was so unwilling to make a small accommodation for me when I had been there for her for so many years. I tried to express how hurt I felt, but she didn't really seem to care. The fallout wasn't just between Lena and me. Our group of friends started getting involved, and I found out that some of them were siding with her, while others thought I was being unreasonable. A few of them even told me that I should just get over it and let Lena have her day. One friend suggested that maybe I was jealous because it wasn't my wedding, which made me feel even worse. I still haven't spoken to Lena in a couple of weeks, and I've officially decided I won't be going to the wedding. My friends are all telling me I'm making a huge mistake and that I'll regret it, but I don't want to be part of an event where I feel disrespected. Now, I feel guilty. I keep second-guessing myself, thinking maybe I overreacted. Maybe I should just have sucked it up and gone to her wedding without Chris, even though it felt like a slap in the face. Part of me feels like this whole situation is just about a wedding, and I'm making it more complicated than it needs to be. But then again, my relationship with Chris is really important to me, and I can't imagine going to an event where he's excluded, especially when we're so committed to each other. So, AITA for refusing to attend my friend's wedding because she won't invite my partner? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for confronting my sister after she kept borrowing my clothes without asking and causing problems with my relationship. So, this has been building up for a while, and I really need to know if I'm in the wrong here. I, 26F, have a sister, Rachel, 22F, who has always been kind of free-spirited, to put it gently. She's the younger sibling who's always been a little loose with boundaries, and we've always had our differences. I love her, but there have been ongoing issues for years that I've tried to let slide for the sake of family peace. However, things reached a breaking point recently, and I'm wondering if I went too far. To give you some background, I work in a relatively high-end job, and I've been able to invest in a nice wardrobe over the years. I've always been protective of my things, especially since I've had to save for them, and it's a part of my personal identity. Rachel has always had a more relaxed approach to money and fashion, often borrowing clothes from me without asking or even letting me know. I've had this happen dozens of times over the years, and I used to let it slide because, we're family. But lately, it's been escalating. The tipping point came when Rachel borrowed a dress I had bought for an important work event, a gala that was a big deal for me. I had saved up for this dress, and it was one of the few pieces I felt truly confident in. I had planned my whole look around it. The night before the event, I went into my closet to double-check my outfit, and the dress was gone. At first, I thought maybe I had misplaced it, but then I remembered Rachel was coming over the day before, and I caught her eyeing it in my closet. I texted her, asking if she had borrowed it, and she immediately responded with, "Oops, yeah, I needed something for party tonight. I'll bring it back tomorrow." No apology, no acknowledgement of how important it was to me. I tried to stay calm, but I was livid. I told her it was my work dress and that I needed it for my event. She said she'd bring it back ASAP, but that didn't solve the fact that I had no backup plan if she didn't show up in time. The next morning, I was getting ready, and she still hadn't shown up with the dress. I called her, and she answered, sounding like she had just woken up. She told me that she had gone out of town for the weekend with friends and didn't think I'd need the dress urgently. At this point, I snapped. I told her how selfish she was for not respecting my things and for never considering how her actions affected me. She got defensive, saying I was being dramatic and that I was always hoarding my stuff, as if I were some kind of villain for wanting my belongings to stay where I left them. By now, I was late to the event, and I had to scramble to find something else to wear. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but it definitely didn't feel as special or polished as the dress I had originally planned to wear. My colleagues and boss noticed, and it made me feel embarrassed and unprofessional. Later that day, I called Rachel again, demanding that she return my clothes and that we have a serious conversation about respect and boundaries. She told me I was overreacting and that I wasn't even fun anymore. I told her that I couldn't take her disrespect any longer, and if she didn't start treating my things with care, I wouldn't be able to have a relationship with her like this. Fast forward a few days, and my mom calls me, saying Rachel is upset with me for blowing up over something so small and that I'm being unreasonable. My mom also implied that I might be in the wrong for not just letting it go like I have in the past, because family is more important than clothes. I understand that, but this wasn't just about clothes. It was about the lack of consideration and respect. I started to feel like I was crazy for being so upset. Now, my sister hasn't spoken to me since the argument, and my parents are kind of caught in the middle. I've been getting a lot of pressure from them to just let it go, but I feel like if I keep doing that, Rachel will never learn to respect my things or my space. She's had a history of doing this sort of thing, borrowing my things without asking, ruining my stuff, and not understanding the impact it has on me. I've told her about how this makes me feel, but she always brushes it off and tells me I need to chill or loosen up. I'm honestly at a breaking point here. I love my sister, but I feel like I'm constantly having to sacrifice my boundaries to maintain a peaceful relationship. I don't want to be the kind of person who holds grudges, but this situation has me questioning if I'm being too harsh. Was I wrong to get so upset about the dress and confront her in the way that I did? Should I just let it slide like I have in the past? AITA for being mad about my sister constantly borrowing my stuff without permission. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she asked me to cover the cost of her venue and decorations. I, 28M, have a sister, Jessica, 26F, who is getting married in a few months. We've always had a complicated relationship, but I've always been there for her in the past, and I honestly thought we were in a good place now. I've never been the type of person to back out on family, and I genuinely want to be supportive of her big day, but things have taken a turn recently that has me questioning my decision. Jessica has always been someone who expects a lot from others, especially me. Growing up, she was spoiled by our parents and kind of took it for granted that people would do things for her. It's not that she's a bad person, but she can be pretty demanding. I've been able to tolerate it most of the time, but this wedding situation has really crossed the line for me. A few months ago, she asked me to be the best man, which I agreed to without hesitation. I've been super involved in the planning process, and I've tried to support her however I could. She asked me to help her pick out a venue, which I did, and I even helped her coordinate with some vendors. I thought everything was going pretty smoothly, but then things got weird. One day, out of nowhere, Jessica called me and said she needed to talk about the wedding. When I asked what was going on, she told me that she was having trouble with the budget and asked if I could help cover some of the costs. She started listing things she needed help with, and I was honestly pretty shocked when she mentioned the venue and decorations. She told me that the venue was costing around $15,000, and she needed me to pay for it because it was so important to her. I was speechless. I don't make anywhere near that kind of money, and while I care about my sister, I wasn't in a position to pay for something like that. I tried to explain that I could help with smaller things, maybe some of the smaller expenses for the wedding, but there was no way I could foot the bill for an entire venue. I was still trying to wrap my head around the fact that she thought I would just agree to this. But then, she started to get upset. She told me that I was being selfish, and that as her brother, I should be willing to help her out in this way. She said, "It's just one day, and I need this to be perfect. You can afford it, I know you can. You don't have any major expenses right now, so why can't you just do this for me?" I kept telling her that it wasn't that simple, but she wouldn't hear it. She even mentioned that if I really cared about her, I would be able to help out, and if I couldn't, it would be really disappointing to her. At this point, I started feeling really conflicted. On the one hand, I get that weddings are expensive, and I know she wants everything to be perfect. On the other hand, this was way beyond what I was able to do. My job pays decently, but it's not like I'm rolling in cash. I have student loans to pay off, rent, and other regular expenses. I wasn't in a position to just drop $15,000 on something that wasn't even my event. I tried explaining this to her, but she kept brushing it off, saying I was making excuses. The next day, she sent me a long text message about how disappointed she was in me. She said that if I loved her, I would put aside my financial concerns and just help her make her dream wedding a reality. The message was so guilt-trippy, and I was feeling overwhelmed. At that point, I decided to take a step back and really think things through. I consulted with my girlfriend, Mia, 30F, and she was honestly shocked by what my sister was asking for. Mia thought it was completely unreasonable for Jessica to demand that much from me, especially considering I wasn't in a position to help in such a large way. I went back to Jessica and told her that I just couldn't do it. I told her I loved her, but there was no way I could afford to cover the venue and the decorations. I offered to help in other ways, like covering some of the costs of smaller items, flowers, maybe a few decorations, or even helping with the planning, but that was the best I could do. Her response was not at all what I was expecting. She absolutely blew up at me. She called me selfish again and said I was ruining her wedding. She said that I was going to make it so much harder for her to make her vision come to life, and that now she would have to cut corners and settle for something less than what she wanted. She accused me of not caring about her or her happiness and said that I was being unreasonable. She even said that I was being jealous of her wedding because I'd never had one of my own. I've been in a long-term relationship with Mia, but we're not planning a wedding right now. She implied that I was just looking for an excuse to not support her. I was hurt by this because, in my mind, I was trying to be as supportive as I could. I had been nothing but accommodating, and now she was basically calling me a bad brother. It felt like she was guilt-tripping me into doing something I physically and financially couldn't do, and it really made me question the relationship we have. She hasn't spoken to me much since, and when I've tried to reach out, she's been cold and distant. I've spoken to other family members about this, and some of them agree with me that Jessica's request was unreasonable, but others think I should just help her out to keep the peace. My parents have been mostly silent on the issue, which makes me feel even more alone in this situation. I'm starting to feel like I'm stuck between supporting my sister and doing what's financially responsible for myself, and I don't know where the line is anymore. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding and setting boundaries around what I can afford. AITA for telling my sister-in-law she can't bring her kids to my wedding. I, 28F, am getting married to my fiancé, Ben, 32M, in a few months. The wedding is going to be a smaller affair, around 80 people, and we've already planned most of the details. One of the things we've talked about a lot is that we're not inviting kids. This has been a point of contention with a few people, particularly my sister-in-law, Sarah, 34F. Sarah has 3 kids, Mia, 6, Noah, 4, and Eli, 2. They are, to put it mildly, extremely energetic and a little wild. I don't mean that in a negative way, but they're very loud, and there's little to no control when it comes to their behavior. I've seen them throw tantrums in public, yell during family gatherings, and generally create a lot of chaos wherever they go. This is not me trying to be mean or judgmental, but as someone who works in a fairly quiet office, I know how much noise and disruption can throw me off. I simply wanted to have a peaceful day without worrying about kids running around. When Ben and I first started planning the wedding, we both agreed that we didn't want children at the ceremony or reception. Neither of us has kids, and it just didn't feel like the right vibe for us. We made a rule that no one under 16 would be invited. We thought that would be a fair compromise because it would allow people with older children to attend without feeling like they had to choose between coming or finding childcare. We sent out invitations and made it clear that we were not having children at the wedding. Almost everyone was fine with it. Most of our friends and family understood and didn't make a big deal out of it. However, Sarah took it poorly. At first, she didn't say much, but I could tell she wasn't happy. A couple of weeks ago, she called me and asked if she could bring her kids. She said that she understood the no kids rule, but that she couldn't find anyone to watch them, and she didn't want to miss the wedding. I told her that we were sticking with the no kids rule, and I was firm about it. I explained that I wanted the day to be relaxed, and I didn't feel comfortable having her kids there because I knew how unpredictable they could be. She immediately got defensive and told me I was being unreasonable. She said I was being selfish and that the wedding was supposed to be a family event, and that by excluding her kids, I was creating tension between us. She also added that other people's kids wouldn't cause the same issues, implying that I was unfairly singling her children out. I was really taken aback by how upset she was. I understand she's a mother and probably feels protective over her kids, but at the same time, this was our wedding day, and we wanted to be clear about the kind of atmosphere we wanted. I tried to explain this, but she didn't seem to care. Instead, she began to argue that I was being too rigid and that if I didn't make exceptions for her, I was choosing a wedding over family. She also claimed that I had never had to deal with the stress of kids, so I didn't understand. That really stung because I know this is a big thing for her. I know being a parent is hard, and I don't want to come across as insensitive. But I also think I deserve to have a wedding where I feel comfortable and not worried about temper tantrums or constant noise. I suggested that she could come without her kids, but she said that wasn't an option because she couldn't leave them with anyone else. I offered to help her look for a babysitter or a nearby family member who could watch them, but she refused. She kept insisting that I was being unfair and that I was putting my personal preferences above family. The argument ended with her hanging up on me. Since then, she has barely spoken to me, and I've been feeling guilty. Part of me wonders if I could have been more flexible. I know this is her family, and I'm technically the outsider here. But I also feel like it's my wedding, and I'm allowed to set boundaries about what I want and don't want. The situation has become even more awkward because Ben, my fiancé, is caught in the middle. He wants to support me, but he also doesn't want to upset his sister. He's told me multiple times that I should just let her bring the kids, but that would completely go against what we agreed on. I know this has put a strain on their relationship, and I don't want to be the reason for that, but I still feel like I'm justified in my decision. I've tried reaching out to Sarah a few times to explain my reasoning again, but she's not responding to my calls or messages. I feel like I'm in a weird spot. I don't want to cause drama, but I also want to stand firm on this rule, especially since it's been communicated clearly from the start. So, AITA for not letting my sister-in-law bring her kids to my wedding. I don't want to create family tension, but I also want to have the day that Ben and I have been dreaming about. AITA for kicking my best friend out of my wedding after she ruined my bridal shower. So some backstory. I, 28F, have been best friends with Maggie, 29F, since college. We've been through a lot together, from bad relationships to job losses to everything in between. She's always been my ride or die, and I've always been there for her. We've had some ups and downs, but we've always worked things out. I thought she would be my maid of honor without a second thought. I was wrong. I got engaged to my fiancé, Tom, 30M, a year ago, and we started planning our wedding. My bridal shower was last weekend, and things were going great until they weren't. The first issue came up when I started planning the guest list. Maggie made it clear that she didn't want certain people at the wedding or shower. She had a lot of opinions about who should and shouldn't be invited, and some of her suggestions rubbed me the wrong way. I understand that she had her reasons. She doesn't get along with my aunt, for example, who could be a bit much at times, but these were people I've known my whole life, and I wanted them there. I told her I appreciated her input, but that I was going to stick with the original list. At first, she seemed fine, but as the wedding day got closer, I noticed some tension building between us. She started making little passive-aggressive comments about my fiancé, Tom, which bothered me. She would say things like, "Oh, Tom's such a charmer," or, "You really think he's the one, huh?" I let it slide because I didn't want to cause drama, but it felt off. The day of the bridal shower came, and everything started off well. My mom and sister helped set up, and a few of my other friends and family were there early to get things ready. The venue was beautiful, and the decorations looked amazing. There's food, drinks, music, and everyone was in high spirits. But then Maggie showed up. She was visibly upset from the moment she walked in. She didn't greet anyone right away, just went straight to me and whispered that she needed to talk. I took her aside, and she started going off about how she didn't like the way the shower was being organized, that it was too fancy and not her style, and that the guest list was off. I asked her to stop and enjoy the day because it was supposed to be fun, but she just kept ranting about how stressed she was feeling about the whole thing. I thought she was just being overly dramatic, but I let it go. As the party continued, things took a turn for the worse. I noticed Maggie hovering near Tom, looking at him in a way that made me uncomfortable. At first, I thought I was being paranoid, but then I saw her whispering to him, making small talk about how surprised she was that we were getting married and how unexpected it all was. I wasn't sure what she meant by that, but I started to feel the tension rising. When I asked her if everything was okay, she just brushed me off and went to grab another drink. Later on, the game portion of the shower began, and that's when everything truly blew up. The host of the shower, one of my cousins, had prepared a few games, including a trivia game where guests had to answer questions about the bride and groom. It was lighthearted and fun, nothing too serious. One of the questions was, "What's the groom's favorite hobby?" I thought it would be fun and easy for everyone to answer, but Maggie raised her hand and said, "Well, I'm sure his favorite hobby is making his fiancée feel like crap." The room went silent, and I honestly couldn't even process what she just said. I tried to laugh it off like it was a joke, but Maggie kept going. She said something like, "I'm just saying it's funny how he's always so perfect in front of everyone else, but we all know the truth." The whole room was awkwardly quiet, and I could feel my face turning red. My mom gave me a look like she was about to step in, but I just froze. Maggie was clearly trying to get a rise out of me, and she succeeded. I stood up and told her that this wasn't the time or place for her to air grievances. She told me I was too sensitive and that I should just relax. That's when I finally snapped. I told her that if she couldn't be supportive on my special day, then I didn't want her there. I told her to leave. Her face went pale, and she immediately started getting defensive. She said I was being overdramatic and that I was ruining our friendship over nothing. I told her that it wasn't nothing, and that I didn't have room for someone who was going to make my day miserable. She left in a huff, and the rest of the shower was awkward. Some of the guests tried to smooth things over, but it was clear that Maggie's departure left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. Since then, I've gotten a lot of mixed reactions. My mom and sister agree with me that Maggie crossed a line and that I did the right thing by kicking her out. But a lot of our mutual friends think I overreacted and that I should have just let her vent or talk to her privately later. Some people even say that I shouldn't have made such a big deal of it and should have let her have her moment, even if it was awkward. Maggie texted me the next day saying that I was a terrible friend for treating her like that and that she's done trying to be there for me if I'm just going to push her away. I haven't responded yet because I'm still processing everything. I don't want to lose her as a friend, but I also don't want someone who isn't supportive in my life. So, AITA for kicking my best friend out of my bridal shower, AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after she repeatedly called me selfish for not doing everything she wanted. So here's the situation. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Lily, 24F. We were really close growing up, but as we've gotten older, our relationship has become more strained. Lily has always been kind of demanding, and I've always tried to be there for her, but recently, it feels like no matter what I do, it's never enough. This whole thing started about 6 months ago when she got engaged to her fiancé, Tom, 30M. Lily was ecstatic about her engagement, and of course, she started planning her dream wedding immediately. I was happy for her at first, and told her that I would help her with whatever she needed. She's always had this idea of a fairy tale wedding, and I wanted to support her vision. But the further along the planning went, the more I started to feel overwhelmed and, honestly, resentful. It started with small things like her asking me to be her maid of honor and planning all the bridal showers, bachelorette parties, and every single event related to the wedding. I agreed, of course, because she's my sister, and I wanted to be supportive. But then the requests started to get more ridiculous. First, she asked me to pay for her entire bridal shower, which was estimated at around $3,000. I thought that was a lot, but Lily argued that as the maid of honor, it was my responsibility to take care of these things. I pushed back, saying that I simply couldn't afford that much, and she started accusing me of not being supportive. I eventually agreed to help pay a smaller amount, but it was clear that she wasn't satisfied. Next came the wedding dress situation. Lily had her heart set on a dress that cost $6,500, and she expected me to help her pay for it. I reminded her that I didn't have that kind of money, and it wasn't realistic for me to contribute that much. This led to a huge argument. She called me selfish and said that if I truly cared about her, I would help her with her dream wedding. This was one of the first major red flags, but I still tried to swallow my frustration and let it slide. Things only got worse from there. Lily started making unreasonable demands, like wanting me to fly across the country for a dress fitting, even though I had just gotten a new job and couldn't afford to take time off. When I said I couldn't make it, she called me selfish again, telling me that it was my duty as her maid of honor to do whatever she needed. But the final straw came when she sent me a list of things she wanted me to do for the wedding. The list was over 10 pages long, detailing everything from arranging the flowers, the decorations, organizing the guest list, helping design the wedding invitations, coordinating the vendors, and even dealing with the seating chart. Mind you, I have a full-time job, and I'm also trying to maintain my own life. She expected me to drop everything to do these tasks, with no consideration for how busy I was or the toll it was taking on me. I snapped. I told her that I couldn't do everything she was asking and that I felt overwhelmed. She responded by accusing me of not caring about her wedding and not supporting her the way a maid of honor should. At that point, I was done. I told her that I couldn't be her maid of honor anymore and that I didn't think I could continue to help her with the wedding. She immediately started crying and calling me heartless. She said I was ruining her wedding and that I was just jealous because I wasn't the one getting married. I felt guilty, but at the same time, I knew I was doing the right thing for my mental health. I had to take a step back. Lily then told me that if I wasn't going to be her maid of honor, I wasn't invited to the wedding. I tried to talk to her about it, but she just screamed at me and hung up the phone. That was about a month ago. Since then, our relationship has completely fallen apart. She's told the rest of the family that I'm being selfish and jealous, and that I'm trying to ruin her special day. A few family members have reached out to me, telling me that I should just suck it up and help her because it's her wedding and she's going through a lot of stress. I get that weddings can be stressful, but I feel like I'm being completely taken for granted. No one is really acknowledging that I have my own life, my own job, and my own struggles. Every time I try to explain myself, I get bombarded with accusations of being a bad sister. My fiancé, Matt, 31M, thinks I did the right thing, and he's been really supportive of me. He said that I shouldn't let Lily manipulate me into doing everything for her, but I still feel guilty. I feel like I let her down, and I miss the bond we used to have. But at the same time, I know I can't keep sacrificing my happiness and my well-being for her demands. I guess I'm just wondering if I'm being the selfish one here. Should I have just sucked it up and helped her, even though it was affecting my mental health? Or did I do the right thing by setting boundaries and stepping back? AITA for refusing to help her with the wedding after all the demands she's made. I, 30F, have a brother, Jake, 32, who has always been a bit of a troublemaker. He's the type who doesn't think things through and tends to act on impulse. Growing up, he would often get in trouble at school and later at work for being reckless or not considering the consequences of his actions. Despite all this, I've always tried to support him, though it's been difficult at times. Jake has been in a long-term relationship with his fiancée, Emily, 29, for the last 5 years. They got engaged 2 years ago, and as far as I could tell, everything seemed to be going well. Emily is sweet, kind, and genuinely a great person, and I've always liked her. She's been nothing but good to Jake, and she seemed totally invested in their future together. About 6 months ago, I started noticing some weird behavior from Jake. He started being less available to me and my family, which I chalked up to wedding stress and him trying to handle all the arrangements. But then things took a turn when I bumped into him in town one Saturday afternoon. I was at a coffee shop when I saw Jake with another woman. I didn't think much of it at first since he's had friends of the opposite sex before, but then I saw them getting cozy, like too cozy. I'm talking about the kind of cozy where you can tell there's something more than just friendship going on. I didn't approach them, but I couldn't help but notice the way they were acting around each other. My gut told me that something was off. The next week, I saw Jake and this woman again, but this time they were clearly having a more intimate conversation, and I overheard Jake talking about how he was just waiting for the right moment to end things with Emily. I didn't hear everything, but I heard enough to know that Jake was planning on breaking off his engagement with Emily for this other woman. Now, at this point, I was absolutely shocked and pissed off. I knew my brother well enough to know that this wasn't just some passing fling. He was serious about this other woman, and he was actively planning to hurt Emily in the process. I mean, he was about to marry Emily, and he was already planning on walking away from her for another woman. It didn't sit right with me at all. I had to know more, so I confronted him later that evening when we were alone. I asked him flat out what was going on. He tried to dodge the question at first, but after some pushing, he finally admitted that he had met someone else a few months prior and had started to develop strong feelings for her. He told me he was conflicted and didn't know what to do, but the way he spoke made it clear that he had already made up his mind about Emily and was just delaying the inevitable. I was furious. I told him that what he was doing was completely unfair to Emily, and I couldn't believe that he would be so selfish, especially when they were so close to getting married. I told him he needed to be honest with Emily and not string her along for the sake of a wedding. He didn't take it well at all. He said I was overreacting and that I didn't understand how complicated his feelings were. He also accused me of being too judgmental and not understanding how hard it was to be in his position. I told him that I couldn't stand by and support him in what was clearly a huge betrayal. I told him that if he went through with marrying Emily and then leaving her for this other woman, I wouldn't be there to witness it. I made it clear that I would refuse to attend the wedding and I wouldn't be involved in any way. I said that he had to figure things out on his own, but that I couldn't pretend that everything was fine when I knew the truth. Jake didn't take it well. He started arguing that I was being unfair and that I was making a scene out of something that didn't concern me. He accused me of turning my back on him and said I was judging him without understanding what he was going through. I stood firm in my decision and refused to back down. The fallout from that conversation has been intense. Jake has been distant and hasn't spoken to me much since. Emily, on the other hand, reached out to me a few weeks later. She wanted to talk, and I agreed, though I was nervous about what would happen. She told me that she had no idea Jake was planning to leave her and that she had no clue about this other woman. She said she felt blindsided by the whole thing and was heartbroken. At that point, I was torn. I had to make a decision about how I was going to move forward. I couldn't just pretend like everything was fine. I knew that if I attended the wedding, I would be betraying Emily, and I didn't want to do that. I also knew that if I didn't go, Jake would be furious with me, but I didn't care. I didn't want to support a wedding that was based on lies. In the end, I stuck to my decision and refused to attend the wedding. I didn't tell Emily the full extent of what I knew because I wasn't sure if it was my place to do so. I did tell her that I couldn't in good conscience support the wedding given what I knew, but I didn't go into details about Jake's plans or the other woman. I figured she deserved to hear that from Jake himself. Jake eventually found out that I wasn't going to the wedding, and he absolutely blew up. He called me selfish, manipulative, and accused me of sabotaging his happiness. He said I was ruining his life by refusing to support him. He's since cut me off, and we've barely spoken. Emily, however, has since broken up with him. She said she couldn't continue to be with someone who wasn't honest with her and who was actively planning to betray her. She told me she appreciated my honesty, but I could tell she was devastated. Now, my family is divided. Some of them are backing me, saying I did the right thing by standing by my principles, but others are calling me a traitor and saying I should have supported my brother no matter what. I'm torn because I love my brother, but I can't condone what he was doing to Emily. I feel like I've lost both of them, and it hurts. So, AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after I found out he was secretly planning to leave his fiancée for another woman? AITA for not letting my sister's kids come to my wedding because of their behavior? I, 28F, recently got married to my husband, 32M, in a small, intimate ceremony. We kept it simple, just close friends and family, and we wanted to make sure everything went smoothly without too much stress or chaos. Most people were really supportive of our decision to keep the guest list small, but there was one issue that caused a bit of drama: my sister's children. I love my sister, 31F, dearly, but she's been a bit of a difficult person in my life. We've had our ups and downs, but I've always tried to be there for her. The problem is that her kids, 8M, 6F, and 4M, are, well, they're a handful. And by a handful, I mean they're absolutely out of control. It's not that I don't like kids. Actually, I love them. I work with kids professionally, and I have a ton of patience when it comes to children. But my sister's kids? There's something else. They've been known to throw tantrums in public places, scream over the smallest things, and generally cause chaos wherever they go. I've had to step in and manage them a few times at family gatherings, and it's always stressful. My sister, though, seems to think they're perfectly fine and refuses to discipline them in any way. She just says they're kids, they'll grow out of it, and brushes it off when they act up. When my husband and I started planning our wedding, we were pretty adamant about the fact that we didn't want to have kids there. We wanted the day to be relaxing and peaceful, without worrying about a child potentially ruining the ceremony or reception. We weren't trying to be rude. It was just what we felt was best for our special day. I sent out invitations and made it clear to everyone that the wedding was adults only, which, for the most part, wasn't an issue. I was dreading telling my sister that her kids weren't invited, though. I knew it would cause some tension, but I tried to be as tactful as possible. I called her up and explained that we were keeping the guest list small and that, unfortunately, we weren't having kids at the wedding. I told her it wasn't a personal thing against her or her kids. It was just the direction we were taking with the event. Her response? She was upset, but tried to keep it together. She said, "I get that you want it to be adults only, but you know my kids aren't going to be a problem, right? They'll be fine. I'll make sure of it." I gently reminded her that her kids have a history of not exactly behaving well at family events, and that I just didn't want the added stress of worrying about them. I also pointed out that it wasn't just her kids. There were a few other family members with young children who would be disappointed too if they couldn't bring them. I said it was a no-kids policy across the board. That didn't go over well. She started crying and said, "You're being ridiculous. Why are you punishing my kids for things they haven't even done yet? This is your wedding. but I thought family was more important than some fancy ceremony. I guess I was wrong. I felt terrible, but I stood my ground. I told her I hoped she'd understand, and that we'd love for her to be there, but that the kids were not invited. A couple of days later, she called me back. This time, she was furious. She accused me of being selfish, saying that it wasn't fair to exclude her children just because I didn't want to deal with them. She said that she wouldn't come to the wedding without them because it would be too hard for her to find someone to watch them on such short notice. I tried to compromise by offering to help her find a babysitter or suggesting she bring a friend or family member to help with the kids during the wedding, but she wasn't having it. She said, "If my kids aren't invited, I'm not coming." It's as simple as that. I was really upset by this, but I didn't want to have a huge fight over it. I told her that I respected her decision, but that I couldn't change the guest list. The conversation ended on a tense note. The day of the wedding came, and it was beautiful. I was so happy with how everything turned out, and I was grateful for the friends and family who came and supported us. But a few hours into the reception, I got a text from my sister. It was a long message telling me how hurt she was that I didn't value her family enough to let her kids attend. She said that she couldn't understand why I'd choose to have a perfect day over having my family there to share in it with me. I didn't respond right away because I didn't want to deal with it in the middle of the celebration, but the whole thing left a bad taste in my mouth. Now, a week later, she's barely speaking to me. She's posted on social media about how heartbroken she is that her own sister wouldn't let her children attend her wedding. I've gotten messages from some of our other relatives saying that I should have just let the kids come, that it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. Some have even said that my sister has been crying about it and that I should apologize. I understand that she's hurt, but I still feel like I made the right choice. I didn't want my wedding day to be overshadowed by potential drama or tantrums, and I didn't want to spend the day worrying about her kids causing a scene. But now I'm feeling guilty. Did I go too far by excluding them? Should I have just let it go and let the kids attend, even if it meant dealing with the potential chaos? So, Reddit, AITA for not letting my sister's kids come to my wedding. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for not helping my sister with her wedding, even though she's done so much for me. So I, 28F, have a sister, Emily, 26F, who is about to get married in a couple of months. Emily and I have always had a bit of strained relationship. Growing up, she was the golden child. She was always the prettier one, the smarter one, and the more popular one. I was always the plain one in the family. And even though my parents never outright compared us, I could tell they favored her. She excelled in school, had more friends, and could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I struggled with school, had fewer friends, and just never felt like I measured up. As we got older, our relationship didn't really improve. I went to college out of state and kept my distance from home. My sister stayed local, and while she was always polite to me, I never felt like she truly wanted to build a close bond. Still, I didn't mind too much because I had my own life, friends, and things going on. Fast forward to a couple of years ago when Emily got engaged. I wasn't thrilled about it. I knew it would be all-consuming for her, and as I expected, her wedding became her whole world. She started planning immediately, talking about colors, venues, dresses, everything. At first, I was happy for her, but I quickly became overwhelmed by the constant chatter about her perfect day. But here's the kicker. My sister began asking me for help with things I really wasn't comfortable with. She wanted me to be her maid of honor. I was hesitant, but I agreed because it's my sister, and I wanted to be supportive, even if I wasn't sure I'd be good at it. She then asked me to help her pick out her dress, which, mind you, was a really expensive dress when I didn't feel like I could afford to contribute toward. The thing is, I have my own life to worry about. I've been working my tail off trying to get my career off the ground, and while I don't mind helping, I felt like I was being pulled in every direction with this wedding. My sister wanted me to help pick out bridesmaids' dresses, attend every bridal shower, and be involved in every little detail. On top of that, she asked me to help organize the bachelorette party, even though I wasn't in a financial position to cover a lot of expenses. I expressed to her that I was feeling overwhelmed. I told her I wanted to help, but I didn't have the time or money to do everything she was asking. I explained that I was stretched thin and that her wedding was starting to feel like it was taking over my life. She was understanding at first, but then seemed to get frustrated with me. "I'm your sister," she said. "Don't you want to be part of this with me? I need you to be there for me." I tried to be clear that I wanted to support her in the ways I could, but I just wasn't able to do everything she wanted. I also explained that I had my own financial constraints and couldn't keep throwing money at things like I was expected to. But she started making me feel like I was being selfish, like I didn't care about her big day. She told me that if I wasn't willing to help, she might have to pick someone else for the maid of honor role. And that's when things got really tense. Eventually, I had to make the hard decision to step back. I told her I could no longer be her maid of honor and that I would attend the wedding as a guest, but I wouldn't be able to help with any of the planning or other responsibilities. I know this upset her, but it just felt like I was being asked to sacrifice everything, my time, my energy, and my finances, for something that I felt wasn't my responsibility. Ever since I made that decision, my family has been giving me a hard time. My parents keep saying that I should suck it up and help Emily because it's her special day. They keep telling me that she's been so supportive of me in the past, and I should be there for her in return. Emily is also upset with me and says that I'm being selfish and inconsiderate, especially after all she's done for me in the past. She's told me that it feels like I don't care about her and that I'm not being a good sister. Now, I'm feeling guilty. I know she's been there for me during tough times, and she's helped me with various things in the past, but it's hard to shake the feeling that she's expecting way too much from me. I understand it's her big day, but I also feel like my own life is important, and I can't just drop everything to cater to her every whim. I've been told that if I don't help, I'm essentially making it all about me, but I don't see it that way. So, AITA for stepping back from helping my sister with her wedding. Even though she's done so much for me in the past, am I wrong for choosing my own well-being over being involved in every detail of her wedding? AITA for not attending my sister's wedding after she demanded I pay for her venue. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Rachel, 25F, who recently got engaged. I've always had a complicated relationship with Rachel, but we've managed to get along, mostly. Growing up, our parents had a clear favorite, and that was Rachel. I was always the responsible one, the quiet one who did what was expected of her, while Rachel was the fun one, the center of attention, and the one who could do no wrong. It's a dynamic that has always been frustrating for me, but I've learned to deal with it over the years. When Rachel got engaged, I assumed it would be like most weddings. She'd ask for some help, I'd do what I could, and then we'd all have a great time celebrating. But as the wedding plans began to unfold, things took a turn that I did not expect. It all started when Rachel called me one evening to discuss her wedding. She had already chosen the venue, which was a gorgeous place, but also incredibly expensive, about $30,000 for just the venue rental. I was shocked when she told me that she was planning to pay for it by asking family to contribute. I didn't think much of it first, assuming she was talking about small contributions or maybe asking people to chip in for the bridal shower or something. I was wrong. A few days later, Rachel sent me a message asking if I would be able to help cover the venue cost. I almost dropped my phone. I mean, $30,000? It's not like I make a ton of money. I've been saving for my own future, dealing with student loans and paying my rent. I didn't have that kind of money lying around, nor did I feel comfortable just giving it away. I tried to handle it diplomatically. I messaged Rachel back and explained that I simply couldn't afford to contribute that much. I told her I could pitch in for some smaller things, maybe a few hundred for decorations or something along those lines, but that paying for the venue was beyond my financial ability. I thought she'd understand. Instead, she called me immediately, practically yelling, "You're my sister. Why would you even consider not helping me? If you really loved me, you'd find a way to make it work. I can't believe you're being this selfish right now." I was stunned. I've always been there for Rachel in big ways and small. I've supported her emotionally through her breakups, helped her when she needed a place to stay, even loaned her money in the past when she was in a bind. But this was different. She was asking me for an amount of money that I didn't have and for something that I didn't even feel should be my responsibility. I tried to stay calm and said, "Rachel, I'm not refusing to help. I just can't contribute at that level. It's not realistic for me. I explained that I had my own financial priorities and responsibilities. But she wouldn't let it go. Every time we spoke, the conversation would inevitably come back to the wedding. And every time, she'd bring up how hurt she was that I wasn't willing to pay for her dream wedding. She even started to tell other family members that I wasn't supporting her and that I was making her wedding difficult. My parents got involved and started calling me to ask why I wasn't being more generous. They suggested I do the right thing and step up for Rachel. That really pissed me off, especially because they never once asked Rachel to be responsible for anything. Growing up, they always gave her a pass. After a week of this emotional pressure, I snapped. I told Rachel I couldn't be a part of a wedding where I was being treated like a bank account. I told her that I wasn't going to attend the wedding if she was going to keep treating me like this. She immediately said, "Fine, don't come then. But don't expect me to ever forgive you." And that was it. I didn't attend her wedding. I didn't even go to the pre-wedding events, like the rehearsal dinner or bridal shower. I felt guilty at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that my decision was the right one. The emotional manipulation, the guilt trips, the complete disregard for my own financial limitations, it all felt too much. Since the wedding, I've been getting constant texts and calls from family members telling me how disappointed they are in me for not attending. Rachel has barely spoken to me, and when we do talk, she reminds me that I chose money over family. It's been an exhausting and stressful time, and I'm starting to feel like the bad guy in all of this. Now, I'm questioning whether I was too harsh. Maybe I should have just sucked it up and found a way to help out? Was I too quick to pull out of her wedding, especially when everyone else seems to think I should have done more? AITA for not attending my sister's wedding after she demanded I pay for her venue. AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after he disinvited my fiancée because of her tattoos. So I, 28M, have a brother, Dave, 30M, who's always been a bit traditional in his views. He's getting married to his fiancée, Lena, 28F, in a few months, and we've had our fair share of tension over the years. But it's never been anything that I would say is unfixable. I have a fiancée, Mia, 27F, whom I've been with for 4 years. Mia and I are very happy together, and she's been an important part of my life for a long time. She's a lovely woman, kind, caring, and generally very easy to get along with. The one thing about her that some people find controversial, though, is that she has a lot of tattoos. I don't mean just one or two. She has tattoos on her arms, legs, back, and even a few on her neck. Nothing overly aggressive or offensive, but they're clearly visible when she wears clothes that show skin. Now, here's where the issue started. Dave and Lena were making their guest list for their wedding, and I assumed Mia and I would be invited, like any normal couple. Dave called me up a few weeks ago and started discussing the wedding. He casually brought up that Mia's tattoos might be a problem at the wedding. At first, I thought he was joking, but he quickly made it clear he wasn't. He said that Lena felt uncomfortable with the idea of Mia's tattoos being visible at the wedding and that they might ruin the vibe they were going for. I was taken aback, but I tried to stay calm. I explained that Mia has the tattoos as part of her personal identity, and they're not going to change for anyone. I offered that Mia could wear something that covered them up if they were that big of an issue, but Dave was adamant that it wasn't about her covering up. It was just that Lena didn't want someone with that kind of appearance at the wedding. I was stunned. I told him that it was messed up to judge someone based on their appearance, especially someone as important to me as Mia. After a bit of back and forth, Dave said that, as much as he loved me, it was his wedding, and if Mia couldn't respect the aesthetic they were going for, then maybe she shouldn't come. He also mentioned that it was a family event, and he didn't want anything to take away from the special day. I could feel my blood pressure rising, but I tried to stay as composed as possible. I said that if Mia wasn't invited, then I wouldn't be coming either. He was silent for a moment, and then said, "Well, I guess that's your choice." I hung up the phone feeling completely rejected. I know weddings are supposed to be a special event, but this felt personal. I immediately called Mia to tell her what happened. She was upset, but didn't want me to cause any problems with my family over it. She's always been the kind of person to just go with the flow, but even she felt hurt by the implication that her appearance was not acceptable. A few days passed, and I spoke to my parents about the situation. My mom sided with Dave, saying that it's his wedding and he can choose who he wants there. My dad, however, was more sympathetic to me and said he thought it was a shame that they were judging Mia based on her appearance. But overall, my family seemed to think I was being dramatic about the whole thing. Some of them even pointed out that Mia should have known this could be a potential issue, given how old-fashioned Dave can be. Eventually, the wedding invitations went out, and Mia and I did not receive one. I was hurt, but I wasn't surprised. I decided I was going to stick to my word and not attend the wedding. I knew that if I went, it would just cause more tension, and honestly, I couldn't stomach the idea of being there without Mia. So, I sent Dave a message. I told him I wouldn't be attending the wedding because, as I had said, if Mia wasn't invited, then neither was I. He responded with a simple, "That's your decision, I guess." I told him I hoped he understood why I was making this choice, but honestly, I wasn't sure I cared if he did or not. At this point, I felt disrespected and hurt, and I wasn't going to put my relationship on the line for a wedding that clearly didn't value Mia. A few days later, I received a message from Lena saying that she didn't want things to get so heated and that she was open to having a conversation about the tattoos. She said that maybe they could find a way to compromise, but by this time, I had already made up my mind. I told her that it was too little too late. The whole situation had left a bad taste in my mouth, and I didn't want to be part of a family event that was based on superficial judgments. She responded by calling me childish and selfish, and I honestly couldn't care less. Now, I'm getting messages from other family members asking why I'm not attending the wedding, and it's starting to feel like I'm the bad guy in all of this. Some say I'm being too sensitive and that I should just let it go for the sake of family. Others think I'm right to stand by Mia, but the pressure is starting to get to me. I guess I'm wondering if I've gone too far here. AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding because he disinvited my fiancée over her tattoos? So, a bit of backstory. I, 28F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a city where housing is a bit of a nightmare. I've worked hard to keep it neat, functional, and relatively stylish. I have a roommate, Emily, 26F, who's been living with me for the past year. We get along fine, though we have the usual roommate quirks. She likes things a bit messier than I do, and I get on her case about that sometimes. The problem started when my younger sister, Sarah, 24F, asked me for a favor. She's a bit more spontaneous and unorganized than I am, and she tends to rely on me for a lot of things when her plans don't work out. A couple of weeks ago, Sarah reached out and said that one of her college friends, Megan, 23F, was going through some personal stuff and needed a place to crash for a few days. Apparently, Megan had a falling out with her roommate, and her parents were out of town, so she had no place to go. Sarah asked me if it would be okay for Megan to stay with us for a few days while she figured things out. Normally, I would say yes to helping out a friend of my sister, but I was wary because I didn't know Megan at all. Sarah assured me she was super chill and that it would only be a few days. I told Sarah I was open to the idea, but I would need to meet Megan first to make sure it was a good fit. Sarah said no problem, and Megan came over to my apartment one evening to introduce herself. Honestly, she seemed nice enough, polite, friendly, a little awkward, but nothing out of the ordinary. I told her that she could stay for a few days, but she needed to respect the space and clean up after herself. The first few days went fine. Megan kept to herself mostly, stayed in her room, and didn't cause any issues. But then things started to go downhill fast. One evening, I came home from work to find that Megan had invited a bunch of people over. I don't know how many exactly, but it sounded like a full-on party in my living room. Emily was home and was visibly uncomfortable, but Megan and her friends are drinking, laughing loudly, and just generally being disruptive. I asked her to keep the noise down since we had neighbors and I had work the next day. Megan apologized, but didn't seem all that remorseful, and the party didn't really stop until late at night. I let it slide because I thought, okay, it's just one night. But then the next day, I came home to find my kitchen trashed. I'm talking dishes piled high, food left out, a bottle of wine spilled on the counter, and general mess everywhere. When I confronted Megan, she apologized and said she was really tired and didn't have the energy to clean up, so she left it for later. I told her that wasn't acceptable and that if she wanted to stay, she needed to help clean up after herself. Megan promised she would. Then things got worse. Megan started inviting people over more often, friends, some people I didn't even recognize, and each time they would party, drink, and leave the place a wreck. I asked Sarah if she could talk to Megan and remind her of the house rules. Sarah assured me that she would, but it didn't make a difference. One night, I came home to find a half-empty bottle of tequila in the living room, the couch cushions stained with something, and the carpet had an awful smell. At this point, I was seriously fed up. I'd already been lenient, and it was clear that Megan had no respect for my space or the boundaries I'd set. I told Megan she needed to leave. She seemed shocked and defensive, asking why I was being so harsh when she was just trying to have a good time and unwind. I explained that I couldn't keep living like this and that she had to leave immediately. Megan didn't take it well. She started yelling, saying I was overreacting and that I was being really mean to her when she was going through a hard time. I tried to stay calm, but at that point, I was beyond frustrated. I called Sarah to let her know what had happened, and Sarah immediately called me to tell me I was being unreasonable. She said that Megan had nowhere else to go and that I should be more understanding. I explained that while I was sympathetic to Megan's situation, it didn't give her the right to treat my home like a party house. Sarah started accusing me of not being a good sister and said that Megan was just going through a tough time. She even suggested that I was being selfish by not letting Megan stay longer since it was just a few more days. I told her no, that this wasn't about being selfish. It was about respecting my space and the fact that I have to live here too. After that, Sarah started texting me nonstop, calling me cold-hearted and saying that I had ruined her friendship with Megan. I felt like she was making me out to be the villain in all of this. I kept my stance firm, though, and didn't let Megan stay another night. Megan left, and things between Sarah and me got tense. Sarah hasn't spoken to me much since, and she's still upset, saying that I should have been more empathetic. She even mentioned that Megan was so hurt by my actions that she considered ending the friendship, though I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. Now, some of my friends are taking sides. A couple of them think I did the right thing by setting boundaries, but others feel that I was too harsh. I honestly don't think I was being unreasonable. I've always been someone who values cleanliness and respect in my living space, and I made it clear to Megan from the start that I expected her to respect my home. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's friend stay after she repeatedly trashed my apartment. AITA for confronting my brother after he let his dog ruin my wedding day. I, 29F, recently got married to the love of my life, Jake, 30M. We've been together for 5 years, and after an engagement lasting almost a year, we were both so excited for the big day. I've been dreaming about this wedding for a long time, and I wanted everything to go perfectly. It wasn't going to be a big, extravagant event, but we had a beautiful venue, amazing vendors, and most importantly, all our close friends and family were there. However, there was one person who caused chaos, and that person was my brother, Darren, 33M. I've always had a complicated relationship with Darren, but up until the wedding, I had tried to keep things civil between us. We've always had our differences, but it wasn't until this event that things went from bad to worse. Let me back up a bit. Darren has a dog, a large, unruly golden retriever named Rufus. While I understand people are attached to their pets, Darren treats Rufus like he's a literal child. He lets the dog do whatever it wants, and I mean anything. Rufus jumps on people, digs through trash, and generally causes mayhem. Darren has always been warned by friends and family that his dog's behavior is a problem, but he refuses to acknowledge it. Leading up to the wedding, I made it clear to everyone in my family that the venue didn't allow pets, and that includes Rufus. I specifically told Darren this multiple times. He promised me that he would find a sitter for Rufus for the day, and I trusted him. The last thing I wanted was my wedding day being overshadowed by a dog running around causing havoc. So, the day of the wedding arrives, and everything is going smoothly. The ceremony went off without a hitch, the food was delicious, and the guests were enjoying themselves. Everything was perfect until the reception started. At some point, I noticed Darren walking into the venue with Rufus trailing behind him. I froze. My heart sank. I pulled Darren aside immediately, trying to stay calm, and asked him what the hell was going on. He looked confused, like he had no idea what the problem was. What do you mean? Rufus is just here for the party. He's part of the family. I tried to keep my voice steady, explaining that the venue didn't allow pets, that I specifically told him this, and that I'd asked him to arrange for a sitter. He brushed it off, saying that his usual dog sitter had canceled last minute, and that he couldn't leave Rufus home alone. I asked him why he couldn't just leave him at home, but he insisted that the dog would be fine at the wedding and that everyone loved him. I told him that he couldn't just bring Rufus in like this. It wasn't fair to the other guests, and it was against the rules. At this point, Darren started getting defensive. He raised his voice, telling me I was being unreasonable and that I was ruining the fun. He actually said, "You're really going to make me leave my dog outside? On your wedding day? No less? That's messed up, my name." I couldn't believe it. I was already stressed out, and now I was being put in a position where I had to decide between standing my ground or being accused of being a terrible sister. I kept my composure and told him to take the dog home, or I would have to ask the staff to remove him. At this, Darren stormed off, with Rufus in tow. I thought that was the end of it, but it wasn't. About 30 minutes later, I heard the sound of barking from outside. I went outside to find Rufus running around the venue's garden area. He was jumping all over people, knocking over drinks, and generally creating a ruckus. I couldn't believe it. Darren had ignored my request and just let the dog roam free. At this point, I was furious. I asked my maid of honor, Sarah, to find Darren and get him to control his dog. When Sarah tried to talk to him, Darren snapped at her, saying that everyone was overreacting and that it was just a dog having fun. He said we were all too uptight. I had enough. I went up to him and I told him that his behavior was completely disrespectful, not just to me, but to everyone else at the wedding. I told him he was making my special day about him and his dog, and I wasn't going to stand for it. That's when Darren got angry. He raised his voice and started accusing me of being an awful sister who didn't understand his bond with his dog. He said I was selfish for not letting him bring Rufus, and that I should have been more understanding. He even said I was making him choose between his dog and his family, which was ridiculous. The argument got so heated that Jake had to step in and tell Darren to leave. At that point, Darren grabbed Rufus and stormed out of the venue, yelling that I was ruining everything. The rest of the evening was awkward, and I could see some of the guests whispering about what had happened. I felt embarrassed, but I also felt justified in standing up for myself and my wedding day. Since the wedding, Darren has barely spoken to me. He sent a few angry texts saying I'm a control freak and that I overreacted. He's also told other family members that I kicked him out of my wedding for no good reason. Some of our relatives have sided with him, saying that I should have just let the dog stay, and I'm being too rigid about the whole thing. Others, however, have supported me, saying that I had every right to keep my wedding day about us and not allow his dog to ruin it. I don't know if I overreacted or if Darren's behavior was just completely out of line. AITA for making such a big deal over this. AITA for not letting my sister bring her kids to my wedding after she called me selfish for wanting an adults-only event. I, 28F, am getting married to my fiancé, James, 30M, in a few months. We've been together for over 5 years, and our relationship has always been a bit of a roller coaster. We've had our ups and downs, but we're both ready to take the plunge. Our wedding is going to be small, only about 80 guests, and we've decided to make it an adults-only event. This has caused some tension in my family, especially with my sister, Rachel, 34F. Rachel has 2 young kids, Ella, 6, and Noah, 4, and she's the type of person who thinks everything should revolve around her children. We've had a strained relationship for years, mostly because I feel like she often expects special treatment, just because she's a mom. She's always demanding that people accommodate her kids in ways that I think are unreasonable. For example, last year when we went on a family trip, she threw a fit because the resort didn't have a kids club available during the evenings, even though we were all adults going there to relax and unwind. When we were planning the wedding, James and I made the decision that we didn't want any kids at our ceremony or reception. We both agreed that we wanted to have a day focused on our love, without worrying about toddlers running around or parents having to leave early because their kids were getting cranky. We wanted to have a relaxed, fun evening with our closest friends and family. I told my sister about the decision a few weeks ago, and she was immediately upset. She said that she understood, but that it would be selfish to not let her kids attend, especially since she has no one to watch them. I gently explained that we were trying to keep the event for adults only, and while I totally understand her predicament, the wedding wasn't the right place for young children. I even offered to help her find a sitter for the day. Rachel didn't take it well. She called me selfish and said that I was being inconsiderate of her family. She also said that I should be more understanding, considering that she was already going to be doing a lot of traveling for the wedding, and it would be too much to ask for her to leave her kids behind. When I reminded her that we'd be providing accommodations for her, she got even more upset. She accused me of putting my wants ahead of her needs and said that it was unrealistic to expect her to attend without her kids. She even suggested that if I didn't want children at my wedding, I shouldn't have invited her at all. Things got really tense after that. She started texting me passive-aggressive comments about how my wedding day was more important than her motherhood and how I didn't understand how hard it was to be a mom. I tried to explain that it wasn't about her kids being a burden, but about creating a particular atmosphere for the day, but she wasn't hearing any of it. Then, to make matters worse, Rachel told my parents about the situation. My mom immediately called me to talk things through, and I could tell she was leaning toward Rachel's side. She said that Rachel was going through a lot and that I needed to be more empathetic. Mom asked if I could make an exception for Rachel and her kids, but I refused, explaining that it wasn't fair to change the rules for one person. I told her that it wasn't about me not liking Rachel's kids. I love them, but about the type of event we wanted. My dad also weighed in, saying that it was my wedding and my decision, but I could tell he thought I was being a little too rigid about it. After that, I felt even worse because it seemed like everyone was putting pressure on me to change my mind. I really don't want to create drama, but I also don't want to cave just because it's easier. Rachel has been quiet for the past few days, but I know she's stewing. I feel bad that it's caused so much tension, but at the same time, I don't feel like I should have to sacrifice what James and I want just to make her happy. It feels like if I give in now, it will set a precedent for her to expect me to bend to her will in the future, especially since she tends to manipulate situations when things don't go her way. I've even started questioning whether I'm being unreasonable. Maybe I'm being too strict? It feels like a fine line between wanting the day to be what we envisioned and wanting to keep the peace with my family. But at the same time, this is my wedding, and I feel like it should be a celebration of us, not an event where I feel pressured to cater to others' needs. So, AITA for not letting my sister bring her kids to my wedding after she called me selfish for wanting an adults-only event. AITA for choosing not to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treated me in the past. I, 28F, have an older sister, Lily, 32F, and we've always had a somewhat strained relationship. Growing up, Lily was the perfect child. She was beautiful, smart, and always got the attention from our parents. I was the wild one, rebellious, less academically inclined, and always the subject of my parents' disappointment. Lily didn't help much in this dynamic. She was always quick to point out my shortcomings, which she would do in front of friends, family, or even strangers. It's not that I ever expected her to fight my battles, but as the older sister, I always thought she would have my back. But instead, it always felt like she was competing with me for attention and approval. In our teenage years, it escalated. She would purposely bring up my failures to embarrass me in front of her friends, or would make sly comments about how much better her life was going compared to mine. I never understood it. I thought maybe it was just sibling rivalry, but as I got older, I started to see how toxic it was. Our relationship became increasingly one-sided. Whenever something good happened to me, she would act disinterested, or worse, try to one-up me with a story about her own life. When I started college, I worked hard to make something of myself, but Lily always made me feel like it wasn't enough. I worked part-time jobs to support myself, and she would casually mention how she could just ask our parents for money whenever she needed it. Eventually, I became distant. I moved away for work, built a life for myself, and stopped reaching out to her as often. When I did, it was awkward. The conversations would always be surface level, and I would leave feeling emotionally drained, like she had taken a jab at me without even realizing it. Over the years, I learned to let go of my hopes of having a close relationship with her. It wasn't easy, but I accepted that we were just too different. A few months ago, Lily called me to tell me she was getting married. I was happy for her in the moment, but then she dropped the bomb. She wanted me to be her maid of honor. My first instinct was to decline. The thought of standing up there with her, after everything that had happened, felt wrong. But at the same time, I didn't want to ruin her big day. I thought maybe I was being too harsh, that it might be a chance to rebuild some kind of bond. So I agreed. I didn't have to be her best friend, just her maid of honor. The wedding planning was where things started to fall apart. She was constantly asking me to help with little tasks, but whenever I did, she would nitpick or criticize my efforts. If I picked something she didn't like, she would give me that condescending. I was thinking more along the lines of tone. I'm an independent person, and I don't like being micromanaged, but I bit my tongue. The more involved I became, the more I realized how little she appreciated me. Every time I made a suggestion, she would turn it down. If I asked about things like the bridesmaid dress color or the theme, she would act like I was being difficult, even though I was just trying to understand the vision. The final straw came about a week before the wedding. I had asked Lily if she could help me with a financial issue I was having. Nothing major, just needing a little support temporarily until I got my next paycheck. I thought it was a reasonable request. She's had a stable job and has always had a decent amount of savings. Instead of offering to help or at least giving me some advice, she responded with, "I don't have time for this right now. I'm planning my wedding. Can't you just figure out yourself?" The way she said it was so dismissive. I felt like I was just some inconvenience to her, and I realized that nothing was going to change. She was never going to treat me like a sister, and I was never going to be a priority to her. After that conversation, I decided that I couldn't be a part of her wedding. I didn't want to stand there pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. So, I sent her a message explaining that I wasn't going to attend. I told her that after all the years of hurt and feeling like I wasn't valued, I didn't think I could do it anymore. I also mentioned that I wasn't comfortable being her maid of honor after everything that had happened. Lily was livid. She called me immediately, and the conversation went downhill fast. She accused me of ruining her wedding, of being selfish, and that I was just throwing a tantrum because I didn't get my way. She said that I was jealous of her life and that I was trying to sabotage her happiness. She even claimed that I was making everything about me when it should be about her. I tried to explain that it wasn't about her wedding, but about how she had treated me over the years, but she wasn't hearing it. She was so angry I couldn't even get a word in. She sent me a text later saying that she was done with me and that she no longer wanted me in her life. I don't know why, but that text actually felt like a relief. It was like I was finally free from the emotional burden of trying to fix something that was broken beyond repair. Now, I'm feeling conflicted. Part of me feels guilty for not being there for her on such a big day. I know it probably hurt her, and I wish I could have been there in a better way, but I also feel like I did the right thing for myself. It's not like I'm going to regret not being at her wedding. Honestly, I think I'll be happier on that day, doing something for myself instead of pretending everything is fine. My friends and some family members think I'm in the right, but others are saying I'm being childish and that I should just let go of the past for the sake of family. They say that no relationship is perfect and that I'm being too hard on her. I've been told that I'll regret not being there when she looks back on it. But I don't know. Am I the asshole for choosing to step away from my sister's wedding after everything that's happened? AITA for telling my sister she's selfish for making my wedding about her pregnancy? So, my 28F wedding is in a few weeks, and I'm starting to get really stressed out because of one particular person, my younger sister, Emma, 25F. I've always had a somewhat complicated relationship with her. We're not exactly close, and while I've tried to be supportive of her over the years, I've often felt like she takes more than she gives in terms of emotional support and respect. The thing is, Emma just announced that she's pregnant, and while I'm happy for her, she's now making my wedding about her. I don't know if it's because of the pregnancy hormones or what, but I am beyond frustrated. Let me explain. When Emma first told me she was pregnant, I was happy for her. I know it's a big deal, and she's excited. She's in a stable relationship, and I've never had any major issues with her boyfriend, so I didn't think much of it. But then, about a month ago, she started making passive-aggressive comments about my wedding. She mentioned how it was going to be hard for her to look her best at my wedding because she's already showing. She also talked about how much stress she's under with all the physical changes happening during pregnancy. At first, I try to be understanding. I'm not naive. I know pregnancy can be exhausting and overwhelming. So, I reassured her that I'd still love her to look beautiful for the day and that she didn't have to worry about any of that. But the comments didn't stop. She kept mentioning how uncomfortable she was with the idea of wearing a bridesmaid dress and how she didn't want to look like a whale in photos. This was already making me a little uncomfortable because, to be honest, I don't want my wedding to be about her pregnancy. It's my day, and I've been planning this for months. I've dreamed of this moment for years, and I wanted everything to be perfect. But I tried to brush it off and kept encouraging her to get a dress that made her feel good about herself. I was ready to make accommodations for her. But then things started escalating. A couple of weeks ago, Emma told me she might not be able to attend the wedding because her doctor said she might be too far along to travel. She said she might not be able to handle being on her feet for long periods of time, and she was worried about the stress it might put on her body. I was disappointed, but tried to be understanding. I told her that I'd prefer to have her there, but I'd respect her decision if she really felt like it was too much. Then came the kicker. She started talking about how much more attention she needed at the wedding because of her pregnancy. She made a comment about how people would be looking at her belly, and she would need extra help with anything that might be too tiring. It was the way she said it that made me snap. I told her, calmly but firmly, that I wasn't planning my wedding around her pregnancy, and I would appreciate it if she didn't make everything about her. That's why she got upset. She accused me of being selfish for not understanding how difficult it was to be pregnant and how everyone should be more sensitive to her needs. She also claimed that I was trying to make her feel bad about herself, when all she wanted was to feel supported. I tried explaining that I wasn't unsupportive of her. I just didn't want her to make my wedding all about her pregnancy. I told her I'd be happy to help with whatever she needed, but I wasn't going to let her derail my day. Now, Emma isn't talking to me. She says I've ruined our relationship, and she's not sure if she even wants to attend the wedding anymore. My parents are kind of caught in the middle, and while they're trying to be neutral, they've hinted that maybe I should have been more understanding. To be clear, I have made a lot of compromises for her. I made sure her dress would be something she was comfortable in. I even told her she could sit out of the ceremony if she felt it was too much, and I'm not pressuring her to do anything she's not up for. I try to be as supportive as possible. But she keeps telling me I'm being unsympathetic and not respecting her experience. So, AITA for standing my ground and telling my sister to stop making my wedding about her pregnancy? I get that it's a huge change in her life, but this is my one day, and I don't want to deal with this drama. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.